Taking a look at circle graphs today. Some students were asked, what part would you want to be in a band? And our results were that 19% of students wanted to play guitar, 17% wanted to play drums, 12% wanted to play piano, 7% wanted to play saxophone, 35% wanted to do vocals, and 10% wanted to play some other instrument. So we need to construct a circle graph from the percents that we were given. And there are 4 steps to doing this properly. And the first step is that we're going to multiply each percent by 360 to find the number of degrees for each section of the graph. Well, why 360? Well, 360 because there are 360 degrees in a circle. And since we're making a circle graph, we need to figure out what percent of the circle is going to be dedicated to each instrument. So we have our amounts here, and what we're going to do is take guitar and we're going to turn the percent into a decimal and multiply that by 360 to give us the number of degrees for guitar. So we take 0.19 and multiply that by 360 and we get 68 degrees, or about 68 degrees. And I say about because there's probably going to be some rounding that you have to do, and you're going to have to round to the nearest degree. Drums, 17% becomes 0.17. We multiply that by 360, we get about 61 degrees. Piano, 12 hundredths times 360 gives us about 43 degrees. Saxophone, 7 hundredths times 360 gives us about 25 degrees. Vocals, our largest section at 35%, becomes 35 hundredths times 360 and it gives us 126 degrees. That's going to be a bigger chunk of the pie. Basically a little more than a third of our entire circle. And then other at 10%, timesing 1/10 by 360 is fairly easy. We get 36 degrees. All right, so we're going to take a look at step 2, which now is to use a compass to draw a circle and a radius, and then use a protractor to draw the angles. Okay, so I've got my handy dandy compass here, and I am going to draw a nice circle here. I'm going to then draw a little dot right where the center of that circle is, and I am taking the straight edge of my protractor and drawing a radius from the center of the circle to the outside. Now my first measurement for the piano is 43 degrees. So if you see that little tiny hole that is in the center of the protractor, I'm trying to line up the center hole with the center dot that I drew right there, yeah, and putting it right on top of that, and you'll see that the line right to the left there kind of gets covered, the radius that I drew. I'm now finding 43 on the outside of my protractor and drawing a little dot, and now I'm going to use the straight edge to draw the radius that goes there, and I'm going to put a little P there for piano. We're looking at step 3. From the new radius, the one that we just drew, we're going to draw the next angle, and then we'll repeat that for each of the remaining angles. So, okay, now when I go to do the next one, which is the guitar at say 68, I'm going to use the radius I just drew as my starting point. I put my little dot on the outside, I use my straight edge, and then I'm going to put a G there for guitar. Notice I'm using the next radius. That radius I just drew, I find my degrees on the outside, 61. I put my little dot on the outside, draw my radius. This now becomes my starting radius for the next angle. So I put the little hole over the dot, I line up that radius, I find my measurement on the outside, put a little dot, use the straight edge to draw a new radius. And that is our saxophone. Now vocals is nice and big, so I'm going to put that hole right on the center dot there. Now I'm looking for 126 degrees. I'm going to find that and put a little, oh, I'm going to turn my paper around because it's a little easier. Line up that hole with the last radius, find 126, which is greater than 90, so it's going to be a big angle. Put that dot on the outside, and then draw my last radius. And I say my last radius, I don't have to do any measuring for the very last item, which was our other, because I've used up all of my degrees. Okay, it's kind of the nice thing about that there. So now I can go and I can label it, which is I can put what was the percentage originally for each of those things. It would probably be proper as well to actually write out rather than just putting the letter of each item too. And it would probably be proper to actually put the percentage. And when you take a look at the next slide, you'll see that how it should look when it's properly done. And when you do have a section that is too tiny to actually do any writing, you can actually label it on the outside of your circle graph and just draw a line to the section to show where that is. So step 4 is to label each section and then give the graph a title. And if you take a look, this would be the proper way. We've got a title here. What part would you want to be in a band? And usually the title is the question that was asked of the people that were surveyed. And you'll notice here that in this properly labeled piece, we have the different instruments as well as vocals and other in there that are labeled into our circle graph. But notice saxophone. Saxophone's kind of a long word, and you're not going to fit it in that section of the graph. So they've written it on the outside and drawn a line to the section of the graph that represents it. You'll also notice that the percent is also listed or labeled within each section as well. All right, so this would be a properly labeled circle graph. All right, and so these are the 4 steps that you're going to need to use when you're dealing with circle graphs.